But even the most formidable hunters are merely the final verse in a much longer story of survival. For every shadow that stalks the ridgeline, there must be a foundation of life, a source of energy that turns the sparse, frozen offerings of the mountain into flesh and bone. At these staggering heights, where the soil is often nothing more than pulverized stone and the wind never rests, the true heroes are the ones who make a living from the impossible. They survive on the margins, grazing on brittle grass, ancient lichens, and roots frozen deep within the earth. Among these resilient souls, one stands out as a monolithic symbol of the high plateaus, a beast so vital and so enduring that it has become the silent partner of humanity in the only place where no other beast of burden could draw breath. The yak. If you have never stood before one in the thin air of the heights, imagine a creature that looks less like a bull and more like a mountain given life. It is draped in a curtain of hair, so long and thick that it nearly brushes the frozen ground, a living shield against the crystalline ice that rides the wind. With its curved, formidable horns and a massive, muscular hump rising over its shoulders, the wild yak, the ancestor of the domestic herds, is a creature of sheer power, often weighing nearly a ton. They inhabit the most desolate and wind-swept plateaus of Tibet, surviving at altitudes where the oxygen concentration is barely half of what we breathe at sea level. The yak's body is not just an adaptation, it is a profound evolutionary answer to a lethal environment. Its heart and lungs are disproportionately large, acting as powerful bellows to capture every stray molecule of air. Its blood is a specialized fluid, saturated with far more red blood cells than our own, each one packed with the hemoglobin necessary to keep the fires of life burning in the cold. Its double-layered coat is so efficient at trapping heat that a yak can sleep peacefully in the snow at 30 degrees below zero, undisturbed by the frost that would claim almost any other life. Yet, within this strength lies a strange and poetic paradox. The yak is so perfectly designed for the extreme cold and the rarefied air of the ceiling of the world that the comfortable, temperate lands of the lower valleys are actually a threat to its existence. If you were to bring a yak down to a lush, warm valley, a place we would find pleasant, the animal would begin to suffer. It would pant, its heart would strain, and it would eventually sicken. The very world that sustains us is a poison to the yak. It belongs exclusively to the razor's edge of the world, a specialist of the heights that can exist nowhere else. It was this unique resilience that led the peoples of the Himalayas and Tibet, thousands of years ago, to forge a pact with the yak that forever altered the course of human history in these mountains. They domesticated this titan, and in doing so, they unlocked the ability to live where no other agricultural society could take root. The yak provided everything: rich milk and butter for sustenance, wool for clothing and tents, leather for boots, and even its dried dung, which serves as the primary fuel for fires in a land where trees cannot grow. Above all, it provided the raw strength to carry heavy loads across mountain passes that seem vertical to the human eye. Without the yak, there would be no Sherpa culture, no permanent villages at 5,000 meters, and no grand expeditions to the summit of Everest. To this day, a significant portion of human life at the top of the world is carried on the broad, shaggy back of this animal. Where the yak grazes, it is rarely alone. Sharing these same wind-blasted plateaus is another elegant survivor of the heights, the kiang, the wild ass of Tibet. As the largest of all wild asses in the world, the kiang is a vision of reddish-brown and white, moving in herds across the high-altitude plains. They are creatures of incredible stamina and speed, capable of traversing vast distances in search of the meager pastures that sustain them. Like the yak and the wolf, the kiang carries the invisible marks of the mountain in its blood, a genetic blueprint for surviving in a world without air. But while some choose to face the winter head-on, others have found a different way to endure the long white silence. Hidden among the alpine slopes is one of the most charismatic inhabitants of the range, the Himalayan marmot, a plump, stout rodent, roughly the size of a large cat. The marmot spends its short, frantic summer with a singular, driving obsession: eating. It devours the mountain grass without pause, accumulating a thick layer of fat beneath its skin, like a traveler filling a fuel tank for a journey through a desert. It knows, with an ancient instinct, what is coming. When the winter finally descends and the food vanishes beneath meters of suffocating snow, the marmot performs a biological miracle. It retreats into the deep darkness of its burrow, seals the entrance from the inside, and huddles with its family to enter a state of profound hibernation that can last up to 8 months. This is not a mere nap, it is a journey to the very edge of death. Its heart rate, which pulses over 100 times a minute during the summer, drops to just a few beats. Its body temperature plummets until it is nearly as cold as the surrounding earth. It breathes so slowly that it appears lifeless, suspended in a crystalline pause, slowly burning through its fat reserves drop by drop until the spring sun finally melts the world back to life. But while the marmot sleeps, its smaller neighbor chooses the opposite path, and in doing so, becomes perhaps the most important animal in this entire ecosystem. Almost no one notices the pika, a small round ball of fur the size of a human fist, with rounded ears and almost no tail. Though it looks like a hamster, it is actually a close relative of the rabbit. The pika does not hibernate. It chooses to stay awake and active through the entire Himalayan winter, moving through the labyrinthine spaces beneath the snow. To survive this, it works tirelessly during the summer months, harvesting herbs, flowers, and stems, but it doesn't eat them immediately. Instead, it piles them in neat mounds under the sun to dry. The pika is a miniature farmer, making hay while the sun shines. It stores these tiny haystacks deep within its burrow, creating a private larder that will sustain it when the world outside is frozen and dead. Why is this tiny collector of grass so vital? Because the pika is the primary source of life for almost everyone else. The snow leopard, the wolf, the fox, the weasel, and the great birds of prey all rely on the pika. In the harshest months, when larger prey is scarce and the mountain offers no mercy, these small rodents are the only thing standing between the great predators and starvation. If the pika were to vanish, the entire ecological structure of the roof of the world would collapse like a house of cards. It is a recurring lesson of the Himalayas. The smallest lives are often the ones that hold up the sky. Patrolling the edges of these pika colonies is a group of specialized hunters that few people associate with the high mountains, yet they are perfectly engineered for this world of rock and frost. Among them is one of the most unusual cats on the planet, the manual, or Pallas's cat. About the size of a domestic house cat, the manual appears twice as large because of its astonishingly thick coat, the densest fur of any cat in the world. This living blanket insulates it from the frozen ground of the high-altitude steppes where it lives, often at elevations exceeding 5,000 meters. Its face is flat and round, with small ears set low on the sides of its head. This is not a quirk of appearance, but a tactical advantage. Those low ears allow the manual to peer over the edge of a rock to watch its prey without breaking its silhouette against the sky. It is not a fast runner, but a master of the crawl and the ambush, a fluffy shadow that hugs the earth, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce on an unsuspecting pika. Alongside the manual, the Tibetan fox roams the plains, and once you see its face, you will never forget it. It possesses perhaps the strangest visage in the entire canine family. Elongated and almost square, with narrow, slit-like eyes that give it an expression of eternal, stony indifference. This fox is an absolute specialist in hunting pikas, and it has developed one of the most ingenious alliances in the mountains. It often follows the Himalayan brown bear as the massive creature uses its powerful claws to excavate pika burrows. As the bear tears into the earth, any pika that manages to escape the bear's grasp bolts for the surface, only to find the Tibetan fox waiting right there, ready to snatch it up. The bear does the heavy labor of digging, and the fox reaps the rewards of the escapees. It is a silent, uncoordinated partnership between two very different predators, united by the harsh necessity of the heights. Yet, there is a third hunter, smaller still, and proportionally more ferocious than any other. The ermine, a diminutive relative of the weasel, possesses a long, slender body, like a silken sock filled with teeth. Its lithe frame allows it to follow pikas and voles directly into their own tunnels beneath the snow, hunting them in the very heart of their sanctuary. As winter tightens its grip, a beautiful transformation occurs. The ermine's brown summer coat turns a pure, brilliant white, leaving only the tip of its tail as a black ink blotch against the drifts. Small, tireless, and brave to the point of recklessness, the ermine will attack prey much larger than itself, patrolling a frozen world that any other creature of its size would find impossible to navigate. These are the guardians of the high plateaus, the small and the mighty, each playing their part in a complex web of life that refuses to be extinguished by the cold. Even as the wind screams across the peaks, these silent dramas of survival continue, hidden in the shadows of the rocks and beneath the blanket of the snow, proving that in the kingdom of the clouds, size is no measure of spirit. Every burrow, every haystack, and every silent stalk is a testament to a life that has found a way to thrive where the very air is an enemy. The world of rock, ice, and parched grass that defines the upper reaches eventually gives way to a different kind of sanctuary. If we descend the jagged shoulders of Everest toward the lower valleys, the landscape undergoes a transformation so radical it feels as though we are entering a different planet. Suddenly, the sterile grey of the heights is swallowed by forests, ancient, humid realms of rhododendrons, oaks and firs, shrouded in a perpetual, ghostly mist. Here, the trees are draped in thick carpets of moss, and the sunlight is filtered through a canopy so dense that the air itself seems to glow with a deep, emerald light. This is a hidden kingdom within the mountain, a place of shadows and moisture that serves as a refuge for some of the most beautiful and endangered creatures on Earth. Among these moss-covered branches lives an animal that seems to belong to a world of fairy tales rather than the harsh realities of the Himalayas, the red panda. You must set aside any image of the giant, black and white panda of the lowlands. The red panda is an entirely different entity. To many who have been lucky enough to glimpse it, this is one of the most enchanting creatures on the planet. About the size of a large domestic cat, it is draped in a coat of intense copper-red fur that provides perfect camouflage against the reddish-brown moss and lichens of the forest. Its round face is marked with a delicate white mask, and its long bushy tail is ringed with alternating colors, serving as both a warm blanket during the freezing nights and a vital balancing tool as it navigates the high canopy. This arboreal specialist spends the vast majority of its life in the trees, feeding almost exclusively on bamboo shoots and leaves, much like its famous namesake. Yet, the red panda is an evolutionary enigma. It occupies its own unique branch on the tree of life, with no truly close living relatives, making it a living relic of a primordial world. But this uniqueness has come at a staggering cost. The red panda is in grave danger. The relentless clearing of these high-altitude cloud forests for firewood, grazing land, and agriculture is dismantling its home piece by piece. Every tree that falls acts as a barrier, isolating these animals into smaller and smaller islands of forest. In these fragmented habitats, it becomes nearly impossible for them to find mates or maintain the genetic diversity needed to survive. Today, the red panda is classified as an endangered species, a flame of life that is slowly being flickering out. Yet, there is hope. A dedicated network of forest guards, many of them members of the local indigenous communities, now patrol these misty valleys, standing as the last line of defense for the forests where the red panda still resists. Deep within these same vertical forests, a much larger and more imposing figure moves through the undergrowth, the Himalayan black bear. It is a creature of shadow, identifiable by the distinctive, pale, moon-shaped patch of fur it carries on its chest, earning it the name moon bear in many cultures. But as we move higher, into the more arid and desolate zones of the Tibetan Plateau, we encounter its cousin, the Himalayan brown bear. This is a creature of light-colored shaggy fur, sometimes referred to as the blue bear due to the grayish tint of its coat. It is here, in the presence of these massive, elusive bears, that we must confront one of the most enduring mysteries of the high mountains, the legend of the Yeti, the abominable snowman.
The mountain
For
provides,
centuries, the
but she
peoples of
also
the
takes.
Himalayas have whispered
We must
stories of a
respect the
massive,
signs, or
man-like
we will
creature
not survive
covered
the
in
journey
thick
ahead.
hair that roams the highest passes, leaving behind footprints of impossible size in the fresh snow. Early explorers and Western mountaineers returned from their expeditions, swearing they had seen this phantom of the peaks. However, when modern science finally turned its lens toward the Yeti, Analyzing the bones, teeth, and tufts of hair kept as sacred relics in remote monasteries, the answer was consistently grounded in reality. These remains belonged to bears, specifically the Himalayan brown bear. The legend of the Yeti is, in all likelihood, the ghost of a real animal. A bear, occasionally walking upright on two legs, leaving tracks that are later deformed and vastly enlarged by the intense mountain sun melting the snow. There is no monster in the shadows, but the truth is perhaps even more fascinating. A mountain bear so rare and so elusive that it birthed the most famous mythical creature on the face of the earth. Hidden further still, among the gnarled roots and dense thickets, is another resident with a secret that is both a marvel and a curse: the musk deer. This is a small, timid deer that lacks the antlers common to its kin. Instead, it possesses two long, sharp canine teeth that protrude from its mouth like the tusks of a miniature walrus, giving it the appearance of a creature from an ancient myth. The males use these tusks in fierce battles for dominance, but the true tragedy of the musk deer lies in a small gland located in the male's abdomen. This gland produces musk, a substance with an incredibly intense and persistent aroma that has been coveted for centuries in the worlds of high-end perfumery and traditional medicine. Gram for gram, this musk has at times been valued more highly than gold. Because of this biological fortune, the musk deer has been hunted with a ruthlessness that has pushed it to the brink of extinction. It has become a ghost within its own forest, a creature that survives only by being more fearful and more hidden than any other. Yet, the mountain is not only a place of shadows and secrets, it is also a canvas for the most vibrant displays of life. Few creatures embody this more than the Himalayan monal, the national bird of Nepal. To see a male monal in the sunlight is to see a masterpiece of nature. His plumage is a riot of iridescent colors: metallic blues, emerald greens, deep coppers, purples and golds, that shift and shimmer with every movement, like a living jewel wandering between the snowdrifts and the blooming rhododendrons. For generations, this stunning beauty made the monal a prime target for those who sought its feathers. Today, however, it stands as a protected national icon, a sudden spark of impossible color against the monochromatic gray and white of the world's ceiling. As we move back toward the vertical world of the Great Cliffs, we encounter the true masters of the precipice, the bees. In the sheer rock walls of the Himalayas lives the largest honey-producing bee on the planet, the giant Himalayan honeybee. These incredible insects build massive, exposed combs that can be the size of a grown man, attached to vertical faces of rock hundreds of meters above the ground. The honey they produce is unlike any other. In the spring, these bees collect nectar from the blossoms of specific rhododendron species that contain grayonotoxins, natural compounds that possess potent psychoactive properties. The result is mad honey, a thick reddish substance that can induce dizziness, hallucinations, and even a state of deep intoxication. For centuries, the Gurung people of Nepal have practiced the terrifying art of honey hunting. It is one of the oldest and most perilous traditions on Earth. Imagine a hunter suspended from a hand-woven rope ladder, swaying precariously over a void of 300 meters. In one hand, he holds a bundle of smoking grass to pacify the thousands of angry giant bees swarming around him. In the other, a long bamboo pole to carefully cut the heavy combs from the rock. Around him, the air vibrates with the roar of a million wings. A single misstep, a snapped rung, or a swarm that refuses to be calmed means certain death. They risk everything for this honey, a substance that heals, that intoxicates, and that serves as a vital economic treasure for their remote communities. It is a visceral testament to the fact that even in the most vertical and inhospitable environments, life has found a way to flourish, and humanity has found a way to reach for it. In a realm where the struggle to live is so intense, the presence of death is an inevitable and constant companion. Animals lose their footing on the icy ledges, herds succumb to the biting hunger of winter, and predators leave behind the remains of their kills. In the high Himalayas, nothing is ever truly lost. The mountain has a specialized cleaning crew to ensure that every ounce of energy is recycled. These are the lords of the sky, and the most extraordinary among them is the bearded vulture, or the lammergeier. With a wingspan reaching nearly 3 meters, it is a giant of the air, But it is its diet that truly sets it apart. The lammergeier eats bones, almost exclusively bones. While other scavengers squabble over the last shreds of meat, the bearded vulture waits with the patience of a stone. When only the skeleton remains, it descends, seizes a bone, sometimes one as large as a human femur, and carries it high into the air. It then drops the bone onto a specific patch of flat rock, shattering it into manageable splinters. Inside lies the prize, the rich, fatty marrow, a concentrated source of energy that the bird consumes with ease. To digest such a formidable meal, the bearded vulture has evolved a stomach acid more powerful than that found in a car battery, capable of dissolving solid bone in a matter of hours. In a world of scarcity, it has mastered the art of eating what no one else can. Alongside it, the Himalayan griffon vulture patrols the thermals. These are among the highest flying birds in the world, capable of soaring at altitudes that would leave a human gasping for breath. Their eyesight is so acute that they can spot a carcass from kilometers away, their descent serving as a signal for others to gather. Within minutes, a fallen animal is stripped clean, its essence returned to the mountain's eternal cycle. This vital service, however, has proven to be tragically fragile. Only a few decades ago, the skies over the Himalayan foothills were dark, with millions of vultures. Then, they began to vanish at a rate that defied explanation. In a heartbeat of geological time, the vulture populations of South Asia collapsed by more than 90%. The culprit behind this ecological tragedy was an invisible one, a cheap anti-inflammatory drug called diclofenac, administered to livestock to treat pain and fever. To a cow, it was medicine. To a vulture, it was a silent executioner. When a treated animal died and the vultures performed their ancient, necessary duty, the drug ravaged their kidneys, killing them within days of a single feeding. This invisible poison effectively erased the continent's scavengers from the sky, and the consequences rippled through every layer of the ecosystem. Without vultures to clean the plains, livestock carcasses lay rotting in the open air, becoming breeding grounds for anthrax and other deadly pathogens. The void they left was filled by packs of feral dogs, whose numbers exploded as they gorged on the carrion, bringing with them a terrifying surge in rabies cases. It was a stark, brutal reminder that in the intricate web of the Himalayas, no creature is insignificant. Even the most despised eater of the dead sustains the health and balance of an entire continent. Today, through the banning of that drug and intensive breeding programs, these guardians of the air are slowly, painfully, beginning to recover. They are the perfect reminder that in nature, there is no such thing as a useless animal. Even the scavenger, often viewed with horror, is the pillar that holds the health of the rest of the world upright. In the high valleys of the Himalayas, these birds of prey occupy a place of profound spiritual weight, far removed from the macabre reputation they hold in the West. For the local people, the vulture is a sacred messenger, a participant in an ancient funerary tradition known as the sky burial. In a land where the ground is often too frozen to dig, and wood for cremation is a rare luxury, the bodies of the deceased are carried to high, rocky altars and offered to the birds. To the families left behind, this is not a moment of horror, but one of ultimate compassion and release. It is a way to return the physical body to the natural cycle, feeding the creatures of the sky and allowing the spirit to begin its journey toward rebirth from the highest point on earth. Here, the vulture is not a symbol of death, but a symbol of passage, the final link in a chain that connects the terrestrial world to the ethereal heavens. But the mountain does more than just recycle life through death. It is a gargantuan factory of life, operating on a scale that defies the human imagination. To understand this, we must return to the promise of water. The massive mantles of ice and snow that crown Everest are far from static. Pushed by their own colossal weight, they slide imperceptibly down the slopes, forming frozen rivers known as glaciers. The most famous is the Khumbu Glacier, a monstrous, shifting cascade of ice that climbers must navigate to reach the summit. It is one of the most treacherous stretches on the mountain, a labyrinth of shifting towers and bottomless crevasses. Yet, beyond the danger, this glacier and its many siblings perform a miracle. They melt, drop by drop, from their lower reaches, giving birth to crystalline streams. These streams gather into torrents, and the torrents swell into the great arteries of Asia, the Ganges, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, and many others. In these freezing, turbulent waters, life begins almost immediately. The snow trout, a fish uniquely adapted to survive in oxygen-poor, near-freezing currents, navigates the rocky shallows. It is the first link in a chain of river life that will stretch for thousands of miles, eventually feeding millions of people, birds and animals in the lowlands. Consider the journey of a single snowflake falling on Everest's peak. It may remain trapped within a glacier for centuries, a silent witness to the passage of time. Eventually, it melts, becoming a single drop in a mountain stream. That drop descends through gorges and plains, crossing borders and cultures, until weeks or months later, it quenches the thirst of a child in a sweltering city, or irrigates a rice field thousands of miles away. The most desolate, lifeless peak on the planet is, paradoxically, the source of life for nearly 1 in every 4 people on Earth. What looks like the end of the world is, in reality, the beginning of everything. This is precisely why the changes occurring at the roof of the world are so ominous. The third pole is melting. Global warming strikes with particular ferocity at high altitudes, and the Himalayan glaciers are losing ice at an accelerating, alarming rate. In the short term, this rapid melting creates massive lakes held back only by fragile walls of ice and loose rock. These glacial lakes can burst without warning, sending catastrophic walls of water and debris thundering down the valleys, erasing entire villages in an instant. In the long term, the threat is even more existential. If the glaciers that feed these great rivers continue to shrink, the water security of 2 billion people becomes uncertain. What happens on these silent, frozen summits does not stay there. It flows down with the water into the cities, the farms, and the homes of half the world. As if the shifting climate were not enough, Everest faces a more peculiar threat, one born of our own obsession with its grandeur. Since humans first stood on the summit over 70 years ago, the mountain has become a magnet for ambition. Every year, hundreds of people pay small fortunes to test themselves against the highest point on Earth. But this influx of humanity has left a deep, unsightly scar. Everest has earned a tragic nickname, the world's highest junkyard. Abandoned tents, empty oxygen canisters, discarded plastic, tattered ropes, and human waste accumulate along the climbing routes and in the high camps. In the extreme cold, nothing decomposes. Where once there was only pristine rock and ice, there is now the dirty footprint of human ego. This human presence has an even darker face. In the death zone, above 8,000 meters, rescue is nearly impossible, and the human body simply cannot sustain itself. Over the decades, more than 300 people have lost their lives attempting to summit or descend. Many of these bodies remain on the mountain, frozen in time, impossible to recover due to the extreme conditions. Some have even become macabre landmarks for those following in their footsteps, a chilling reminder that the roof of the world does not forgive mistakes and keeps forever those who underestimate its power. Yet, the human story on Everest is not only one of conquest and debris, it is also one of profound, ancestral respect. The Sherpas, the people who have lived in the shadow of the mountain for centuries, do not see Everest as a trophy to be won. To them, the mountain is Chomolungma, the mother goddess of the world. Many of the valleys surrounding the peak are considered sacred, places where for generations, the killing of animals has been strictly forbidden. Without a formal plan, these areas became unintentional sanctuaries for wildlife, refuges where the snow leopard, the Himalayan tahr, and the monal pheasant could thrive undisturbed. The Sherpas have not only adapted to this environment through their culture, but through their very biology. When a person from the lowlands ascends to high altitude, their body panics, overproducing red blood cells in a desperate bid to capture more oxygen. This thickens the blood, making it sluggish and dangerous over time. The Sherpas, however, have breathed this thin air for thousands of years, and evolution has left its mark on their DNA. They possess unique genetic variants that allow them to use oxygen with incredible efficiency, without the need for dangerously thick blood. Scientists recently discovered something even more astounding.
It doesn't match.
One of these critical genetic adaptations did not originate with modern humans. It was inherited tens of thousands of years ago from the Denisovans, an extinct group of ancient humans related to the Neanderthals. The world's greatest climbers carry in their blood a gift from a lost humanity, a biological legacy that allows them to thrive in a realm where almost no one else can. Everest, then, has shaped the people just as surely as it has shaped the animals.
Here,
Today,
put this one in the
this
recycling
ancient
sack.
wisdom is being paired with modern conservation. The entire Everest region on the Nepalese side is now protected within a vast national park, recognized as a World Heritage Site for its incomparable value. Specialized expeditions are now organized with a goal far different from reaching the summit. They go up to bring down tons of trash.
Careful, it's
Climbers
heavy.
are now required
Reads
to pay
22
deposits,
pounds.
which
Okay,
they only
22
get back
pounds
if they
recorded for
return with
Team
their
4.
own waste.
This
At the
land is
heart of
our
this
life.
struggle
If
are the
we allow
Sherpa
them to
communities
build here,
themselves,
our-
the people who know and love this place better than anyone else, leading the fight to keep their mountain of stone clean and alive. To protect Everest is to protect much more than a single peak. It is to safeguard the water tower of a continent and the sanctuary of creatures found nowhere else in the universe. It requires us to imagine, if only for a moment, what it means to spend a single night in this realm. As the sun dips behind the Himalayan giants, the temperature vanishes into the black, star-studded sky. The cold becomes a living thing, searching for any weakness. In these hours, the water in an animal's body wants to turn to ice. The heart must work twice as hard to pump blood through lungs starving for air. And yet, while a human would perish in hours, the mountain remains a theater of activity. The marmot sleeps its deep, stone-like sleep in the earth. The snow leopard moves like a ghost through the shadows, hearing things we could never perceive. The pika stirs beneath the snow, nibbling on the hay it gathered in the sun. They all sustain the same silent miracle, the transformation of a place that should be dead into a place that is, against all odds, vibrantly alive. This equilibrium is as delicate as it is ancient. Every predator is a guardian of the balance. The snow leopard needs the bharal, and the bharal, in a strange twist of nature's logic, needs the leopard. Without the predator, the herds would multiply until they exhausted the sparse vegetation, leading to mass starvation and the collapse of the hillsides. A mother leopard spends years teaching her cubs to read the wind, to wait for the perfect moment, and to master the impossible leap. If she disappears, it is not just one animal that is lost. The entire pyramid of life she crowns begins to wobble. In a world where space is vast, but resources are few, every single piece of the puzzle is vital. But even as we marvel at these great hunters and the resilient people of the peaks, the greatest secret of Everest remains hidden in the one place no one ever thinks to look. Beyond the jagged ridges and the swirling mists, it is time to fulfill the promise made at the very beginning of our ascent. We have searched for the king of the mountain among the powerful, the fur-clad, and the soaring. We looked for a beast of muscle and bone, a creature that could roar against the gale and claim the sky as its own. But the record holder for the highest permanent resident on the entire planet is none of these. It is a creature you would likely crush without even noticing. A tiny, dark jumping spider, barely a few millimeters long, known to science as Euophrys omnisuperstes, meaning standing above all. This minute arachnid has been found living at altitudes exceeding 6,700 meters on the slopes of Everest. It dwells in the cracks of the rock, in a world where not a single blade of grass can grow, and where the air is too thin for almost any other terrestrial animal to survive. This opens a profound question that challenges everything we know about biology. If there are no plants at that height, no flowers, and no traditional food chain, what could such a creature possibly find to eat? The answer is one of the most surprising and hidden wonders of the natural world. This spider essentially eats the wind, or more accurately, it eats what the wind brings. The same ferocious currents that lash the Himalayan peaks do not blow empty. They act as an invisible, high-altitude conveyor belt, sweeping up a constant rain of tiny insects, pollen, spores, and organic debris from the lush valleys and distant plains thousands of meters below. These microscopic hitchhikers are carried by the jet stream and eventually deposited into the rocky crevices of the high mountains. Scientists call this the Aeolian ecosystem. It is a world that does not rely on local photosynthesis, but on a gift from the sky. The jumping spider is the apex predator of a kingdom made of crumbs, a master of a territory that fits between two pebbles, but is as real and as vital as the thickest jungle. And yet, there is a level of life even beyond the spider. Deep within the heart of the ice itself, life persists in forms we cannot see with the naked eye. Within the glaciers of Everest, there are tiny holes filled with dark dust and meltwater. And inside these microscopic oases live communities of algae, bacteria, and the legendary tardigrades. These water bears are perhaps the most resilient creatures ever discovered. They can survive being frozen solid, years of total dehydration, and levels of radiation that would be lethal to any other being. They have even survived the vacuum of space in scientific experiments. Here, at the very ceiling of the world, they represent the final frontier of the living. This is the ultimate truth that Everest hides. We often assume the king of the mountain must be the largest or the strongest hunter, but the higher you climb, the more you realize that the true masters of the limit are the smallest. A spider that fits on a fingernail, a wingless insect, a microbe in a drop of ice. When everything else surrenders, when the air vanishes and the cold turns the world to stone, it is these tiny sentinels that continue to fly the flag of life. We began this journey at the highest point on Earth, in a place I told you was a zone of death, where nothing could survive. And in the harshest sense, that remains true. The very summit of Everest is a desert of rock and ice, a place of impossible winds, where no creature can truly call home. But between that dead peak and the green valleys far below, we have discovered an entire universe of resilience. We found a feline that can become invisible against the stones, birds that soar higher than commercial jets, and a 1,000-pound beast that sleeps peacefully upon the snow. We met a rodent that harvests hay like a miniature farmer, hunters with the faces of ancient spirits, and foxes that form unlikely alliances with bears. At the final border, we found a spider reigning over a world made of dust. Everest teaches us a lesson that is easy to forget in our comfortable, low-altitude cities. It teaches us that life does not seek the easy path. It clings to the most minute fissure. It learns to breathe where there is no air, to find warmth where everything freezes, and to find a feast where there is seemingly nothing. The more extreme the environment, the more ingenious and breathtaking the creatures that inhabit it become. The most hostile territory on the planet is not empty. It is overflowing with the inventions of nature that no human imagination could have conceived. But Everest also shows us how fragile this majesty truly is. This mountain of stone and ice, which has been rising for 50 million years, is changing before our very eyes. The glaciers are shrinking at an unprecedented rate, and the third pole is losing its ancient armor. Our own presence has left a heavy mark. Everest has been called the world's highest junkyard, littered with the discarded oxygen tanks, shredded tents, and plastic waste of those who sought to conquer it. Even more somber is the Rainbow Valley, a section of the high slopes named for the colorful gear of the fallen climbers, whose bodies remain frozen in time, impossible to recover, serving as grim landmarks for those who follow. The mountain does not forgive arrogance, and it keeps forever those who underestimate its power. Yet, the story of Everest is also one of profound human connection. The Sherpa people, who carry the genetic legacy of ancient ancestors in their blood, continue to show us that it is possible to live in harmony with the heights, treating the goddess mother of the world not as a trophy to be won, but as a sacred entity to be respected. Protecting the roof of the world is not a distant, abstract goal. It is the protection of the water source for 2 billion people, and the only home for creatures that exist nowhere else in the known universe. The next time you see a photograph of Everest, that white, lonely pyramid cutting into the dark blue of the sky, remember that you are not just looking at a dead pile of rock. You are looking at the very frontier of life itself. It is the place where, against the cold, against the wind, against the lack of oxygen, and against all human logic, nature has planted its highest flag and declared, "Even here, I endure." If you have survived this journey to the roof of the world with us, we want to thank you for your curiosity and your spirit of adventure. For those of you who have followed us to the very last second of this expedition, we have a simple request. If this journey moved you, if it changed the way you look at the mountains or the resilience of the wild, please leave a like on this video. It is your support that allows us to continue breaking boundaries and bringing these stories to light. Make sure to subscribe to Reino Selvaging so you don't miss our upcoming documentaries. There are still so many frontiers of our planet waiting to be explored with you. Before you go, head down to the comments and tell us which city or state you are joining us from. We read every single message, and knowing that our community spans the globe is what gives us the strength to keep climbing higher. Take care of yourself, take care of the natural world around you, and we will see you on the next great journey, right here in the Wild Kingdom. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon.